had some.
Wow.
Wow.
Assassin's Creed Shadows. Who's excited?
I've not been excited for an Assassin's Creed game since the second one. I played the first two, and that was it.
So what is Assassin's Creed Shadows? Well, basically, feudal Japan and quintessential feudal Japan is, of course, a gigantic black man running around in samurai armor. That's what I think of when I think of quintessential feudal Japan. I think of oh, that's loud. I think of a giant African man running around with probably the most expensive looking armor in feudal Japan. So basically, this was a choice that Ubisoft decided to do, which is what a lot of companies are doing at the moment. This character, who is a historical figure, Yasuke or Yasuke, although samurai term sort of bestowed upon him is definitely up for debate, is shoehorned into everything. He's put into everything now, and yeah, he's now in this feudal Japan. You could have done anything, but I mean, even feudal Japan's got black people now, so you know we're going to do our best to shoehorn in every single DEI quota. But Bo, you've done a brief little bit of diving on history with this. Do you want to regale us with what you know of Yasuke?
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, it's a classic example of, as you say, shoehorned in. It's just it's weak source. It's bad history, but they do it all the time, don't they? So it seems that, and we're talking about the 16th century, late 16th century, so the 1500s in Japan, and there was a European, I believe, an Italian missionary had gone there, and among his entourage was, we understand, a black person. Now we're not even sure if he was completely sort of fully sub-Saharan African black or what. But it does seem from accounts that a person of colour did visit Japan in the 16th century. Beyond that, we know very, very, very little. I mean, even the Wikipedia entry says this, quote, "Few details are known about him, including his date of birth, family structure, place of birth, ethnicity, and native language." So, in other words, almost nothing. Almost nothing. Another line says, "It is important to note that despite," and this is Wikipedia, which is pretty woke. If they could lie about it easily, they would. But even on Wiki, they say it's important to note that despite popular myth and modern depictions, there's no historical writings nor evidence that Yasuke was ever granted the rank or title of samurai and was never given a fief or referred to as having one in any writings. Most of our knowledge of his life comes from just a few passages written by the Europeans that were there. So, again, just to reiterate, almost nothing is known of him, but it does seem, from some accounts that do survive, that there was a black man visited, and the local sort of, well, not even a shogun, the local sort of leader, if you like, what's his name? Begins with
Oda
N.
Nobunaga.
Nobunaga, yeah. He was fascinated by him, had never seen such an oddity before, and assumed that he was sort of painted or that it was ink, that his skin had been inked in some way. And it was just sort of fascinated by him, wanted to see him be scrubbed down and washed to make sure it wasn't ink. Now, in the medieval world, or the pre-modern world, certainly the ancient world, people were always fascinated by something just sort of new that they'd never seen before. In ancient Greece and ancient Rome, for example, they're fascinated by dwarfism. Absolutely fascinated in a nice way. In a nice way, they're not ostracized. You know, if you'd never seen a man with such dark skin, well, it seems that he was treated him as sort of an oddity. Again, in a sort of a nice, fairly nice, welcoming way. But yeah, certainly wasn't a samurai. Wasn't in Japan for very long, a matter of months, maybe a year or two at most, before he went off again with the European mission that was there. And yeah, apparently he was tall, something like 6 foot. It was very strong. They considered him very, very strong. And he was probably in his mid to late 20s. So, yeah, a person of color did visit Japan in the 16th century, was not a samurai, and did not really have any amazing adventures whatsoever. He walked around town as an oddity. That's it.
Yeah.
And from what it looks like he was given to Nobunaga, because Nobunaga was like, this chap's like, interesting. So the Jesuits gave Yasuke to Nobunaga, and then when Nobunaga had to commit seppuku, Yasuke was then given back to the Jesuits, like go away. From what I can tell, from what I've read about it all, I was essentially a sword bearer, which is a glorified servant. He was just a page boy, just a page, just a servant. And samurai as well, in that time period, there's sort of dual meanings to samurai, like to serve. And so they use the term page and samurai in some texts interchangeably, as if he's just a servant again. But I mean, look, representation only matters when it's representing one thing. We don't need Japanese people in feudal Japan. Okay, I do find this quite funny because, and culture, Nick, you'll have to remind me of this as well. When the Ghost of Tsushima came out, didn't they say that it was cultural appropriation because that game was made by Western Game Studios and was set in Japan? Wasn't there some outrage about that?
There was Nick, you would say that there were many actually sources of outrage for that game, but I think that was one that was out there. Yeah.
But now we've got,
but the game was very well received.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, there was some a little bit of pushback there from that side.
Yeah, and now we've got this bloody set in feudal Japan, but just there you go. It only works one way, this stuff. But this post isn't particularly interesting. It's just funny because the comments are funny. Like, remember, no pre-orders. Can we get the whole game on a disc? Would you like to talk about the pricing, season pass, and what base game content was cut so you could repackage it later? Which is completely true because you have it here.
Yeah. I mean, you got it already. Okay.
Yeah, I've got it. Yeah. £60, which is, I think, probably about $90, maybe $80, $90. Like that.
Okay, so the standard edition is $69.99 in the US. The gold edition is the gold edition is $109.99 in the US.
Fuck me, that's a game for $109.
Wait, hang on. The ultimate edition is $129.99.
Here. Ultimate edition is £115. £115 for a game.
Good gravy. And then mind you, here in the States, it's $17.99 a month to be on this Ubisoft Plus bologna sausage.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like when I was talking about with Star Wars Outlaws, if you sign up for that service for 1 month, you can basically play this game for $17 and some change.
But of course,
and then cancel your service.
That's so busy. Yeah, that's probably the best way to do it. But that's the way they want you to do it. But obviously not to cancel. But of course, look, you've pissed off a lot of Japanese people with your trailer.
Yeah,
loads of literally, because this is Ubisoft Japan, and it's just people going, "This is ridiculous cultural appropriation. What are you doing?" You've literally gone out of your way to include a black person in this, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. Yeah. It's just rank comedy, isn't it, really? This is what do they call it? Afrocentrism? Is that what?
Yeah.
That's what they call it. It's the term, isn't it?
It's funny. Japan is, in my opinion, one of the least black places in the world. Famously, for centuries and centuries, they were a closed society. A lot like on the Korean Peninsula, is that they didn't accept any foreigners. If you landed on the Japanese main islands, for centuries, you were killed, even if it was accidentally. You accidentally washed up, you're shipwrecked on there. It's like, sorry, our law is that you're sort of a foreign alien. You're not allowed to be alive and on our islands. So, sorry, it's death. So, I mean, yeah, one of the. It's just it's absolutely insane. I mean, one of the other things I would say is that the concept. I see people in the chat talking about samurai and things, and I've studied the history of Japan a little bit. I've got a few bits of content on it. But what I do know about in quite a lot of detail is 19th century and early 20th century Japanese history. I've sort of studied the figure of Hideki Tojo quite closely, read a number of books about him. And anyway, in that study, they talk about how the very concept of samurai is extremely difficult. Different people in Japan think different things about it. It existed as a different concept at different centuries and in different kingdoms within Japan. So it's not like there's this one perfect, like Platonic version of what a samurai is. It's much more nuanced and layered than that. And certainly there were no sub-Saharan African samurai, just none. So it's
sure?
not possible.
Ubisoft is telling me he was a real life samurai.
I would bet my mortgage on it.
Yeah.
Also, that's the other thing is that when you look at the researchers and the writers on this, there's a professor of Japanese literature and culture, a woman called Saki Schmidt Hori. That's her name, and she's extremely sort of insanely woke. Really, has written books about male on male love in the medieval era. You get the idea. Writing books, just what I call an anti-historian, somebody like Mary Beard. It's their job to professionally distort and warp history. They're not looking for what's historically objectively true or anything like that. No, it's about peddling a narrative. They're an activist pretending to be a historian. And when you look at some of the other people involved, there's one called Brooke Davis, who's a sort of a director of the storytelling and the lead writer. These are all sort of not literally blue-haired, but they're the blue-haired Karen psycho people that don't care about how it might offend Japanese people. No, it's just this Afro, as you say, sort of Afrocentric theme, and it's bizarre and perverse. And I hope that the market and the Japanese people just reject it wholesale.
Well, Japan is famously very anti-woke. They are very much against all of this stuff. They hate this stuff. So it will be fascinating to see. And you know what's so interesting to me is if you really wanted, the thing is, right, we're well aware of why they've done this, right? We're not stupid. We know why they've done it. We know why they've done it. They're catering to African American progressives, right? That's absolutely what it is. That's the only thing that they've done here, and just progressives in general, liberals, woke people, whatever you want to call it. If you really wanted to do something, well, we know that, they know that we know, and they're still lying to us about it as well, about the reasons. But if you really wanted to show someone else, it would be William Adams, the first British person in Japan. William Adams, Mora Anjin, an individual which has a train station named after him. He's got a burial site in Japan. He has statues after him. Someone who has had a massive cultural impact on Japan and is still relatively revered even today. That's the person that you would show. You can't do that because he's white and he's English. That's a no-no thing. So,
yeah.
There you go. There you go. I mean, Culture, you want to chime in on this, bud?
Sorry.
Oh, and he's got his eyes. He's gone. Nick, save me. Do you want to say some stuff on this?
Did you guys know that Netflix released a anime series on this?
They're really pushing this character.
Yeah.
There's a movie coming out in like a year's time as well.
Yeah, and when I was doing some research and looking at some stuff on this, there a lot of this is coming from black organizations who are basically saying that he was the first black samurai. But then when you go back to the historical accounts of who this person was, there's nothing that says he was ever a black samurai. I've looked. I can't find one thing out there talking about him being a actual samurai in Japan. It's just basically he was a black man of African descent was in Japan during this time period, and he was a servant or a retainer to another Japanese guy there for about a year.
Yeah,
and that's
a lot of people.
pretty much
A lot
it.
of people. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people like to reference this Smithsonian article here. Who was Yasuke? Japan's first black samurai, by Jacqueline Germain.
Just remember, these are the same.
Well, she's just a staff contributor. She's a nobody.
Yeah.
So they like to reference this because it's the Smithsonian, but they'd failed to look into who wrote it.
And there's a question mark at the end of that.
An intern wrote this that everyone referenced. Literally, everyone references this article, and it was an intern that did it.
No, I was about to say this is like the Cleopatra thing where she's like, "Well, my grandma said Cleopatra was black."
Yeah,
like, I'm sure your grandma said a lot of bullshit.
Yeah, the accounts are that, he certainly wasn't samurai. I saw someone in the chat saying you had to be born into a samurai family. Absolutely. It was a caste. Japan had a caste system. You can't just turn up somewhere and become a samurai. It doesn't work like that. It could not work like that. But yeah, this theme of, you mentioned Cleopatra. Cleopatra was a Macedonian, sort of a northern Greek woman. She was not black. But we have all sorts of examples. I mean, there's the idea that they love to say that one of the Roman emperors, Septimius Severus, was black. He was not. He was. Yeah, he was not. He was. You could Google it, and you'll find someone saying yes, he's the black emperor. He wasn't. He was born in North Africa. He was born in what the Romans call Libya, which isn't even modern day Libya. But he would have been North African. He would have looked like Zinedine Zidane. He would have looked like a Tunisian or a Moroccan person. He was not sub-Saharan black. But yet they say, there's like an element, there's a way they can sort of distort or warp history, and they'll just dial that up to 11. I don't care that it's a lie. They don't care that it's easily falsifiable. They don't care about any of that. This Germain, whatever that woman's name was, doesn't care about truth or historical accuracy or anything. It's just about crowbarring black people into history. And it is just weird. I mean, we've got lots of examples of like Mary Seacole was sort of more important than Mary Nightingale or something. Or there was that one black Tudor musician. Like there was an actual Tudor era musician in England who was black. And so they say black music started in England 500 years ago. It's like you're really, really distorting history there, like shamelessly, really. But that's what a lot of hack historians, leftist hack historians do. You can find something that's obviously not true, like for example the story that Jesus visited Glastonbury, or Joseph of Arimathea visited Glastonbury, or that Jesus visited Mobile, Alabama. You can find out where that story came from and how it isn't true, right? But these people don't care about that. They'll find it somewhere, and they'll find a reference from something somewhere and just say, there you go, this is historical fact now. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting.
Well,
there's people out there that still think The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise was a historical, real story.
It wasn't?
No.
I think the thing is, right, you got to pick your poison at a certain point. You can't sit there and be, sitting there and be like, well, this country's racist. We must have more inclusion, while simultaneously saying black people have always been here, or black people built Britain, and immigrants built Britain. It's like you can't. Those things they clash. At one point, you've got to choose which one it is. We're either incredibly racist or immigrants built Britain. Like, which one is it? Which one is it? It's one or the other. Pick it. Well, it's actually neither, quite frankly. But yeah, they're just nonsense terms, aren't they? At the end of the day,
the twin narrative that Britain has been black since Roman times. That you had African, never mind, it was Northern Africa, but African Roman legionaries invaded Britain in the age of Christ, or in the 1st century AD. And therefore, all of British history is down to them, that diversity and people of colour built Britain. But also, all of the empire and colonialism is systemically racist and evil. Both those things at the same time.
Okay, so are you referring to the Cheddarmen?
Well, no, yeah, they go even further back to Cheddar Man. Yeah, even pre-Roman days. Yeah. Or the Amesbury Archer, deep in the Bronze Age.
Yeah, there's almost no DNA from those people in the UK right now. I mean, again,
the Cheddar Man's been disproven anyway now. So
yeah. I was speaking with an anthropologist last night. We had a discussion about this on another stream, and I'm just, it's like a lot of the things that they're trying to resell as history are complete fabrications and lies.
Yeah. Well, Culture, to get it back on topic with Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed, what do you think? Because you buggered off because you had a phone call.
Yeah, what I think is they're silly, they're foolish, they're dumb with no actual. The nice thing about the Ubisoft games is while they do, distort history, they don't do it in the way that it's being done in this game. They have they set the game around a base set of time. As Bo described, in this case, what was the 15th century? 16th century, 16th century. So that's a 1500. So, and yes, they were very ethnocentric, right? There was, I mean, you could actually say xenophobic if you really chose to, but they really were focused on keeping their culture, and there's a lot of arguments for that. You can certainly have, world travel and all the other things, but the Japanese have managed to keep relatively the same for a very long period of time and very traditional. So in modern speak, they are conservative in that sense. But the fact that they're willing to distort history this dramatically kind of turns me off from the game. A, it's too expensive. B, I stopped pre-ordering games a very long time ago because I've had so many bad experiences with that. So my suggestion is, if you're interested in this game, just don't buy it right away. I mean, a few spoilers isn't going to change your enjoyment of the game if there is some to be had.
Gameplay either, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, you could be 2 hours into this game when it first rears its ugly head that you're like all of a sudden going, "Wow, I no longer want to play this game." And that's
the two characters are DEI. One's a woman, and one's a black man.
Yeah, and neither of those things were happening in that period of time. So, and it's certainly portraying Yasuke as a samurai is just absolutely ridiculous. And as Bo pointed out, the History Bro, check out Bo's channel, and check him out on podcast Lotus Eaters too. But he's 100% right. I mean, this was such a caste system across the board. I mean, if a member of your family was X, you grew up being X. That's just the way it was. And so this kind of deviation really is a problem. And this isn't the first time that they've tried to insert some stuff into it.
So you're telling me we weren't shoguns and shit?
No. Again, I mean, one of the few things that I can point out in some of the shows that are based on historical events that are inaccurate, those most of the time don't offend. So this is an entire game of lie. I'm not going to invest in it. So
yeah.
Why don't they dive into some actual historical events, like when the Moors invaded Sicily?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Your guess is as good as mine. These people are insane.
Well, if you know what that story is,
we've got some
hate black people in the greatest of light. But anyway,
we've got some super chats about this. So, something my nulleth fell off says, imagine what the woke would have said if they would have put a white boy as the main character in Assassin's Creed based on feudal Japan, though that would be more accurate based on history and technology to be there.
True.
Well, I mean, even then, it kind of would have been a little bit more accurate. There were, because it was the Portuguese, Mediterranean. Yeah, so yeah, you are right. And we know what they would have done. They would have been outraged about it. They'd have been like, "This is terrible," blah blah blah. You could have done the same arguments they're using for this glorification of Yasuke as well. I mean, it's just nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. T Neil for $5 says Ubisoft is still a thing, but I'm sure this will go well. I can't wait to save my money and not buy this pretentious, vacuous, Le French crap. Yeah, the French are at it again. We've got another one says, Bo, that sounds like just some loser trying to make her shitty fanfic history canon.
Yes.
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah, and
Japan hates wokeness because Japan loves European culture and history more than any other outside of their country.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another one from Tino says, "We was Romans and cheese." And Israel R drops in over on Streamlabs for $5. Says, "I'd rather watch Afro Samurai or a game based on that show, since that show and character was great. I lived in southern Japan, Kyushu, and outside of the military, rarely saw other foreigners. Cheers." Yeah, I mean, there are places in the world where there just aren't foreigners, and Japan, certain places, there really isn't. You know, it is quite an enclosed place.
I mean, I'm sorry, but the plot sounds like a canon film. Some black dude going over to Japan, learning ninja, coming back, kicking some ass.
Yeah,
like that's a canon movie waiting to happen.
Afro Warrior.
It's sad. It is sad. But that actually takes us nicely. Oh no, sorry. We got this one from here. Adam Henson drops him £10. Says, "Great points. And Ubisoft is a company that essentially makes the same game every year, and that's all their games. The same lazy objectives with constant microtransaction pop-ups."
Yes.
Yep.
And
this is
get used to not owning your games as well.
Yeah, screw those guys. Well, actually, this game they came out and said that you don't actually have to be always connected to play this game. It's a you can enjoy it without on that. But
didn't go down well though.
No. Look, they know they suck. Okay, they know they're suckling at the teat of the DEI finance bros, you know, at BlackRock or wherever else they're getting their funding from, because you don't develop anything on your own money. But back to that real quick. Not only Ubisoft has patterned itself after EA, who makes the same game every year. It's called Madden, and you have to you end up buying the same game every year, Madden football. Or and now they've rebooted the college football game, so now you're going to buy 2 of the same games every single year, and they're always the same. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Well, one thing I'd just real quick to say is I've got quite fond memories of the Assassin's Creed games. I played the second one set in Florence.
Yes,
if you remember that. With Ezio Auditore de Firenze.
He's my favorite. He's my favorite.
Yeah. I played that game all the way through over the years. I think 3, maybe even 4 times. Loved it. And I played the one after that where it's set in Rome and in Italy, but you get to jump around the Colosseum and stuff. And then that was it. I sort of had enough of it at that point. And I was surprised to see that this is the 14th game.
Yeah.
I had no idea that many.
It's been going on for a long time.
Right. Well, if you want to get some diversity and be true to history, the game Black Flag, which was their pirate game, based on it was Assassin's Creed. That one's accurate. I mean, those things actually happened, and they were sourced to characters in history. You know, and I loved it. You know, and it was very well done. And again, if you do a bit of research, you can take some dramatic license with the stories and these people crossing paths, and not disrupt what actual history was. You know, and there were. I mean, consider this. I mean, at that point in time, you know, people were starting to spread around. People from various navies, you know, banded together to become freebooters, pirates, whatnot. So yeah.
Well, on the topic of Ubisoft, we're going to shuffle on to our next subject.